Hello, and welcome to episode 4 of Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, and we will be reading chapter 4 of Bleach today. As always, these videos are cut into 3 pieces. The first will be the rereading, the second will be analysis and response, and the third is going to be talking about the connections to the larger manga. So if those other topics interest you, feel free to jump ahead to those other chapters. Timestamps will be in the video description as always. But let's get started with the chapter. Chapter 4, Why Do You Eat It? All hollows were once normal people. Bleach, Chapter 4, Why Do You Eat It? What? Normal? You didn't... I thought they were monsters. I gotta kill them? That's right. They are monsters now, and we must kill them. So the ones I whacked used to be no time to argue. That girl is going to die. Are you freaking stupid? Don't be rude. I'm totally not stupid. Why, Orihime? Why would you blow a chance like that? I blew something? Yeah. You gotta reach out and grab it. Grab it? Yes. If he asks if you want him to walk you home, you say, "Oh yeah," and you pretend your leg's killing you and you hang on his arm. And then, when you come to a nice secluded spot along the way, shove him to the shadows and throw him to the ground. Tatsuki? Actually, you could just shove those magnificent boobs in his face and let him attack you. Then it's all his fault. But he's already getting pretty chummy with that new girl. Boobs? Yeah, that Ichigo's no slouch. Oh, I saw them at the park together. Have you ever been to the park with Ichigo? We went to the arcade once. Me and Ichigo? Alone in the park? Hey, Orihime! Ichigo! Come on, racing to the teeter-totter. Oh, Ichigo, that practically rhymes. You're amazing, Ichigo. Okay, ready, go. Look out! Run! Run, me! I mean, champ! What? What the? I thought this was a park fantasy. Huh? What? What was that? Sound. Oh no! Enraku fell down! Enraku, speak to me! It's just Enraku. Jeez. Enraku. Jeez. Hey! Oh no! How do you get torn? Whoa, maybe the fabric's rotting? That can't be. What's this? It looks like blood? Hey! Whoa, Orihime, what's wrong? What happened? Hollows attack their own family? Yes. How come? Hollows eat souls because they're hungry, right? I thought they attacked randomly. Hollows attack humans and ghosts randomly after they've eaten their own families. No way. And one more thing. They don't eat souls because they're hungry. They eat souls to ease their pain. Hollows are fallen souls, souls that were not admitted to the Soul Society by a Soul Reaper, souls that were left behind, souls that weren't saved from other hollows. These fall, lose their hearts, and become hollows themselves. Now, then the hollow soul forever strides to fill the emptiness inside. It stalks the people it loved most in life. You've heard of widows who soon follow their husbands to the grave. Their husbands ate their souls. Today, when we saw Orihime, she had a large bruise on her leg, where a hollow grabbed her. That's why I asked about her family. She said that she had an older brother, or you said that she had an older brother. If he was her only family, then I'm certain he will come for Orihime. What? What hit me? I'm bleeding? What on earth is going... Oh! What is happening? That thing, it's a monster? My body, what's it doing over there? What's happening to me? Am I dead? I feel dizzy. A chain. I'm chained up. I can't breathe. I don't like this. Oh! Uh, Tatsuki. Am I... I can't be daydreaming. I've got to save Tatsuki. Ha! Tatsuki, are you okay? Run for it! Tatsuki, what's wrong? Say something. It's no use, Orihime. She can't hear us. She can't see us either. How do you know my name? Have you forgotten my voice? That wounds me, Orihime. Ichigo? You think you can stop me? Sorry, Captain Overbite, but that is a Soul Reaper's job. You want Orihime for dinner? Then I'm your first course. Orihime's house is an apartment. This is the street side. Apartment 202 is the Inoue residence. Inoue, Marita, on vacation. Empty unit, Iwao, separated from wife. Anyway, that was chapter 4 of Bleach. As always, these are pretty unscripted, so do forgive me whenever I stumble over a line or, misread something. That's just bound to happen. But, pretty cool chapter. A lot of things going on. Obviously, continuation of what we had in the previous chapter, so that's pretty neat. It seems like this will go on for the next one as well. So we're starting to get our first little story arc in Bleach after our initial setup. Yeah. So here's the second part of the video. We're going to get into some analysis, a little bit of response. We're going to be talking about narratively and kind of thematically what's going on, as well as also visually kind of what's happening here too. There's some pretty neat visuals in this chapter that I think are worth kind of looking into and seeing how Kubo uses those visuals. So immediately we hop into the chapter and we've got Rukia reminding us of what we learned in the previous, like that big revelation of hollows all being humans. I don't buy that Ichigo's room is actually this big. This is probably more done for the effect of showing like this incredible gulf between Rukia's understanding and like her knowledge and where Ichigo is, that he's like learning these things. But that, again, I think it's also a pretty neat way to lay out this page. Like, this is a fantastic page of Bleach. Like, if you just really having her set, we're coming in, we're going to read All Hallows Were as our first line, right? We've got Rukia set here top left. She's also aligned that way in this larger panel. Ichigo's aligned bottom right. We're getting his reaction that we're going to see as we come down to this. So, like, naturally the eye is probably going to be drawn, first to All Hallows Were. We get this image of Rukia. We're going to come corner ways through this page, and then we'll hit Once Normal People and see Ichigo's reaction. You might respond, you might technically go like right to left, right to left, right to left, but following the sentence and the way that this is constructed seems to kind of drag you from the one text bubble to the other. But just the framing of the two faces, the way that Rukia is portrayed, that she's got this kind of serious expression, and Ichigo is a little shocked. This whole layout, fantastic. Like, even from the beginning, even from as early as chapter 4, clearly Kubo has a real grasp on how to like present dialogue and exposition in ways that really show these characters and how they feel and how they're expressing. I think that's one of the really big things that separates kind of, amateur mangaka from the more experienced ones, or at least the more talented ones, is how they express dialogue and exposition. And so I think the most boring series are the ones where you just get whole pages of words, and it's like, I don't want to read a novel. I'm here for something visual. This is a visual medium. And I think Bleach, more than anything, manages to make really great use of its visuals and of the medium. And so part of why I wanted to reread Bleach was to celebrate exactly that. Like these wonderful visuals, and this whole chapter is some of my favorites so far, honestly, of the series. Out of going back and revisiting, it really struck me how well a lot of this is laid out, especially like even comparing it to contemporaries that are around now. Um, yeah, like I'm reading some of the current Shonen Jump series, and they'll take a moment, like if they want to explain something, it'll just be like I've seen at like times two whole pages back to back where there's not even a single character's face. It's just all text and like a few like images that are supposed to represent a little bit of what's going on in text, and even those don't really work super well as representations. Whereas Kubo always, I think, is aware that he's writing a scene and that these characters are in scene and they should present that. And he does a great job of laying that all out and arranging it on page. So, yeah, great. A lot of praise for Bleach. I could go on forever on that angle, but I'll try to highlight a couple of the other places artistically where he's doing some really fantastic page layout, because that's the thing that I typically don't hear as praise for Bleach, which always throws me for a loop. Is that like Bleach has like really next level paneling compared to a lot of other shonen, both from its day and even 20 years later. It's wild. Um, Here we come to the chapter cover for Ch.4. Rukia. I like her twin braid look. Um, it's pretty cute. We're probably never gonna actually see that sort of look, but it's yet again. I mentioned this in the other video. I like that Kubo uses these as ways to kind of dress up and experiment with different looks for the characters and show kind of ways that they might dress. Cute little hairpins too. The two rockets. Anyway, nice little summer outfit, which is pretty fitting. I noticed in the previous video and also in this one that this chapter actually takes place in May. That's where Orihime's calendar is. I'll point it out whenever we get there. But the kind of neat thing is I'm curious if Kubo was also writing this in May as well or during the summer, which would explain, like, they're in the park. It's obviously May otherwise. So curious. Construct a larger timeline of Bleach. This is the way to start it, I suppose. But yeah, we step back to that revelation that these are in fact people, that Hollows used to be people, but that Rukia is reasonably sure that Orihime is going to die. And so, hopping back over to Tatsuki, we're learning a little bit more about. Obviously, Tatsuki and Orihime are friends. They're hanging out at their place. Tatsuki's giving Orihime a hard time. I like that Orihime defends herself as not stupid, and we get a little bit more of, like maybe she's not. I don't think like she's like literally mentally deficient. I don't think that's the point. I think that she's just kind of like got a huge imagination and is a bit socially inept in certain ways. She's a very genuine person, but I don't think she's like a schemer or like is like that. I say a schemer, certainly not by any means, but she doesn't have like the sort of social awareness that some people might have. Um, which is a little bit of her charm. Like she's 100% like imaginative and enjoys the kind of things that she enjoys, and doesn't like I think she's not really aware of what's going on around in the world around her. Um, and like that's obviously she's getting hit by cars and she doesn't think anything. She's like, oh yeah, that just happens, right? She really accepts the world as is, and she isn't really critical of what's around her, which I think sets her as apart from a lot of these other characters that we get. I also like, constantly in shonen manga, our protagonist is presented as like kind of like this loner character who is just meeting these other people for the first time, whatever situation they're being thrust in, or they don't get acknowledgement from their peers until the series really starts. Um, Again, compared to contemporaries in the big three like Naruto and One Piece, where Nero starts off and he's only got the one actual friend, right, through his mentor. Um, and then, with One Piece, Luffy still kind of he needs to meet these other people and forge these connections and build his crew. Whereas Bleach, certainly they meet a lot of new characters as the series goes along. That's something that happens, but I really like that Bleach starts off with Ichigo's like a high school student. He's got these friends. He has these friends groups. And it's natural. I don't know, like whenever people talk about Ichigo as being like a believable and relatable protagonist, it's because like he's a dude, like he's a guy that is written as an actual like rationally existing high school student, and not as some like real extreme maybe sort of situation where I think a lot of shonen protagonists kind of those aspects of their social life get put to such extremes for people to maybe latch onto for different reasons. Like obviously everyone's felt lonely. I doubt everyone is like literally I have no friends. People find their groups, all that stuff. So yeah. Getting back to what's sort of happening on page, we're getting a little bit more of Tatsuki here, kind of impressing upon Orihime that she's blown her chance with Ichigo here. I also like that Tatsuki, like, she's so insistent. She's very, obviously very, like, forward character, as opposed to Orihime, right? Who, you know, like, earlier in the previous chapter was resenting the fact that she wasn't more persistent herself, but also wished that Ichigo was. Whereas Tatsuki's like, yeah, you should have just thrown him to the ground. And like even the suggestion of that is enough for Orihime to spit out her drink. Um, don't know, what exactly if she's like kind of being playful with like throw him to the ground and it's like really like literally like just jump him. Uh, but probably more the latter as she immediately switches gears to like, oh yeah, just show off your boobs. He'll attack you. Haha, it'll be his fault. Which, oof, that's loaded. Um, not just front loaded. Har har. But I do think that this is, again, I don't know if there's like a breast envy thing happening here or what, or if maybe like people could read this as Tatsuki being a little bi or whatever. Certainly she's, the idea here, I think, to really take away from this is more that Tatsuki is realizing like, okay, her friend's maturing and she should probably use that to her advantage, and Orihime is completely oblivious to that. I love, she's like back here by this mirror, like my boobs. But yeah, even Tatsuki's noticed that, Ichigo's made a pretty close connection to Rukia, and yeah, quickly ask if Orihime's been with Ichigo anywhere alone, and that they went to the arcade once. So you get the real idea of like Tatsuki being kind of this real forward, tomboyish sort of character. Goes to the arcade, right? Talks about jumping boys. I love Orihime's imagination of what going to the park with Ichigo would be like. That it's like kind of silly and doting, and then her imagination sort of goes off the rails as like they've got like king and sprinters or something, and they've got like race, and then they're all racing, and then she's imagining that she's the champion of a boxing match, but then all these people are taking pictures, and she's going to get assassinated. I love that stuff. Like she just completely like that. I love this insight into her character, and I don't remember if we actually got this little sequence in the anime or not. I'll have to go back and rewatch the episodes, but I absolutely love this sequence, and it's something that I'd love to see more of, even though obviously Orihime is not a point of view character. We spend much more time with Ichigo. Just that insight, good use of so kind of one of the things that, I mentioned in the previous chapters that I didn't like was that internalization, kind of being just using the black space in between the panels and having narration stand there. I felt that was kind of weak, whereas I think this is 1,000 times more effective. Obviously because it's making use of the medium, but also we do get like that dimpling, the hashing down into a black background to show that this is an imagined scene, and it's such like it's so it's obvious whenever you pay attention to it, but if you're just reading the manga, it's pretty subtly done that like this ends up framing these panels in this imaginary world, and we get it dithering back as we come out of that imagination. So it's neat use of, again, like another little stylistic thing to show that this is in our imagination. I mean, it's pretty clearly there as well, but um, yeah, much better use of that sort of effect to show us, what's going on in a character's head, rather than just internal narration shooting up between the panels. But yeah, I think in the anime we just get a jump to Orihime insisting on the run and look out part, because I do remember that pose. Anyway, yeah, Tatsuki, even though she's friends with Orihime, she clearly does not follow the thought process. And here their bear Enraku, which she's named Enraku apparently, it was sitting there and now it's torn. So obviously that bothers Orihime. She's upset about it. She still cares about this thing enough to have it, named Enraku. I play the Bleach mobile gacha game, and Enraku is one of the accessories you can get, which is kind of interesting because I completely forgot about it until rereading this chapter. Which, I mean, I guess light spoilers. Enraku's not that big of a deal in this over 600 chapter manga. Who knew? The teddy bear, not a major player. Sorry to spoil those of you who were expecting otherwise. Again, talking about cool shots and paneling, I love this 3-panel development where we get this sound effect that like shaloop, but they're considering this tear, and I love that here we get a very clear look of the tear going down, and then her hand there, right? And, we come back and we're getting some dialogue, and then we get the shot back here where she's like, well, it can't be that it's rotting fabric. And so we're made to think, okay, well, what, obviously it's probably, we know the hollow's coming for, it's probably something like that. By the way, the hollow's name, Acid Wire, fantastic name. Um, Pretty cool name for a enemy slash hollow. But anyway, and I loved, yeah, then we get this, and it could be interpreted as shading here, but then as we close in, we see like the blood. And I think that's a fantastic zoom, because, this echoes this panel up here, here where we have this long shot, and then shooting to like the all black to highlight and draw your eye to the hand here and the blood. Um, just really fantastic. Like sells this moment of quiet panic and realization. And in case you hadn't gotten it, we get a very small like, well, what's this? It looks like blood, and then bam, next page. Acid Wire's arm shooting out of its face, because that's how it's materializing, is through the face of Enraku, and tears straight through Orihime's chest, and knocks her spirit out of her body. So obviously this wound isn't entirely physical. Otherwise, Tatsuki would probably talking about the huge hole in Orihime's chest. But she's been knocked back. Tatsuki doesn't know what's happening. She can't see the hollow, right? We're returned to Ichigo hopping around the rooftops. Again, here's our crescent moon. As always, like I said, I had to look up whenever this is written. I wonder if that even corresponds to moon phase. Doubt it. It's probably more stylistic, but hey. But yeah, we get this deal where we learn that hollows attack their families first, typically, right? And then after that, they presume to continue to eat souls, but it's not for satiating a hunger. It's satiating this emptiness that they have, right? That they're these lost souls that weren't admitted to Soul Society, either by neglect or legitimately being barred. It's unclear. But that they're left behind, and also souls that weren't saved from other hollows, right? And after they lose their hearts, they become hollows. So that hollow striving to fill that emptiness of being left behind, of not being able to pass on. And this really reflects, there's some, I'm pretty sure it's Buddhist, but there's some mythological, like realm of hungry dead stuff going on, Japanese mythology with Gaki. I'm mostly familiar from playing the Neo games, notably, or Nio, I suppose. But I think maybe Neo is actually more accurate. Whatever. Anyway, but that there literally is, for Bleach, a lot of mythological elements are drawn upon, and so this is one that Western audiences might not be that familiar with. But the idea of there being like an afterlife or an afterworld of damned spirits that are the hungry dead that they just insatiably eat, and it's because of whatever such reason. It's kind of like a purgatory, where you sort of become a ghoul of sorts. So it's that sort of terrible cannibalistic kind of afterlife where there can be no satiation for your hunger because there's an emptiness in your soul. And I think that's really what it's kind of pulling from. Um, those celestial realms and that kind of stratification of afterlives kind of gets lifted a lot for Bleach, but there's also a lot of things from, like, especially like Mesoamerican and other sort of fantasy and folklore going on in Bleach. Unfortunately, I am not super scripted in all of that, so if there's anything that any of you notice or are aware of in any of these chapters, feel free to point that out, because I always like learning and seeing where Kuo's adapting more. But yeah, um, I do like. I love that, widows following their husbands to the grave. I think that's more about depression, but hey, we could blame it on Hollows. Anyway, um, interesting that, again, so here we have conclusion for why Rukia was so interested in Orihime's bruise. It's because it was a wound left by a hollow. So it seems like hollows leave pretty distinct wounds on people. Um, you know, Pretty important. And yeah, so, the fact that she mentioned having an older brother and that he passed away, he's almost certainly going to go for Orihime. Curious why he attacked Ichigo first. If the idea is that they always attack their family, excuse me, but maybe, it varies. And we're back to Tatsuki getting knocked around. She can't see. Ooh, excuse me again, I swear. I don't even eat or drink anything that should be getting me like that, but whatever. Anyway, she obviously can't see the hollow, so she's wondering why she's bleeding. Clearly, its attacks can tear and affect physical things. So hollows don't just attack spirits, they also attack humans. But we saw a little bit of that in the first chapter. It wasn't actively happening outside of, Yuzu being lifted up by Fishbone D, but clearly hollows can knock around and beat on humans. Here we have confirmation that this is in May, assuming that Orihime updates her calendar. Sure hope she does. And here we have a new kind of aspect that's a little easy to miss on first glance. Orihime does point it out, but that she has this chain that's connecting her to her body. I did notice earlier, if you look at the spirits in the previous chapters, they both don't have a chain drawn. The first little girl spirit doesn't. I don't think the little boy spirit does in chapter 2. The old man spirit that is attached to Ichigo just has his noose, of all things, on him. I guess you wear whatever clothes you wore whenever you're dead. So, follows them ghosty rules. Whenever you die, you keep those clothes on, I guess. Including if you hung yourself, a noose. But here, yeah, it seems Orihime has been knocked from her body, and she has this chain that's connecting her chest. She's wondering what's going on there. I like that, and again in the first chapter, Kubo was using the kind of square panels to do internalization, but is now swapped to using this kind of effect. I wonder if he's got an assistant as early as Chapter 4 doing that for him, or, if it's just something that stylistically he's trying a different thing out. But these I think these were also in the previous chapter 3. So, I think I like this a little bit more. It's effective at shorthand for, thoughts outside of having to do little bubbles or changing the bubble design. But yeah, here she pulls on this chain that she has, and it's hard for her to breathe, but she doesn't really know what's going on. Kind of another thing that's a little easy to miss here. So we get acid wire reaching out, and then Tatsuki's neck gets kind of pushed in here. And here we could see from, assumably from Orihime's perspective, she could see the, acid wire choking Tatsuki. And so that's why she rushes in to knock him off of her. Probably saves her friend's life, honestly. She's gasping for air. But it doesn't seem like Tatsuki can see Orihime or acid wire. And yes, he explicitly says that she can't see or hear them, right? I wonder, if his mask is still damaged from the previous fight there, but his hair has fallen into the space. Orihime has not recognized him yet, and that is quite frustrating for him. Here we have also Acid Wire speaking a lot more than the other hollows, showing a lot more sentience. And that's very likely on behalf of the fact that, he's had part of his mask broken. Maybe he's more aware. Certainly, maybe that's why he's returning to Orihime. Who knows? But, the other kind of thing going on is the previous chapter, she did have that wound on her leg, right? And she was involved in a car crash or, car accident. But if he could have attacked her there, why didn't he kill her, right? So clearly, Acid Wire has this memory of the past of her, kind of has the idea of who she is. Clearly here, he knows her name. So Hollows, again, we're getting a lot of signs, not nearly the mindless monsters that they were initially maybe portrayed to be, right? And here, talking about, again, fantastic things. So I mentioned a lot of what Kubo does is he sets up these page transition moments, right? So here we're getting this slash down of his I guess his hand, his claws towards Orihime. We have her reacting. We get this slish that was assumably her getting, literally attacked, right? And so we're expecting to see the reaction of that, like the follow up. We've built this anticipation through these last panels. The next page, we're going to get a payoff for that anticipation. And what we've come to expect here is that it's going to be action between these two because they're the only ones in scene, right? And so sure enough, even Orihime is in that same position that we're in. She's wincing, she's expecting to get hit, and with the little bit of black cloth, we're shown, no, this is actually Ichigo. And, again, just wonderful use of that expectation on going from one page to the other. Just again, really understands what he's doing visually with the manga, that not only has he, through the last couple of chapters, built this anticipation of action happening on this page turn, but then is able to play with that expectation now that he's set that up for you. So, also just an awesome panel of Ichigo here, really showing off him kicking ass, blocking the attack with his sword. And he gets a pretty great line here, too. So we really get to see a little bit of Ichigo flexing as a protagonist. Clearly cut pretty deep. And again, nice use of the zoom in to a face to show a really emotional reaction. You'll get that a lot. Especially, again, with these wide panels that come across the whole page. So we can really get a lot of expression packed in and not be condemned to a smaller kind of, 1/4 or, 1/2 page. Anyway, and yeah, That's it. That's end of chapter. We learn at the very least that Inoue's setup is such that they could get knocked over to the other empty unit, I suppose. Um, Curious. Again, she's a high school student living alone, which is kind of interesting. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on with Orihime, huh? Anyway, that's it for my analysis for this chapter. Quite a lot going on. I think a lot visually, just fantastic moments. There's maybe too many to name. A lot of action between a Hollow and other characters that is new for us. But yeah, biggest thing is just kind of learning about a little bit more about Hollows, a little bit more about what's going on there. Anyway, let's talk about how this connects in large part to the rest of the manga. There are a few connections here, not as many as maybe the previous chapters, but still some ones that I noticed at least, some things that I think are kind of neat. So, if you don't want spoilers, this is your moment to hop out of the video. Go ahead and call it quits here. But if you have read all the manga, or if you're interested in how this connects to larger parts of the manga, then keep on listening, because this part's for you. So right away, we get that Rukia has very clearly been hiding this more morally dubious information from Ichigo. Like she almost certainly should have told him right away, like, hey, hollows used to be human souls, but they've been, for whatever reason, they've become hollows. They're monsters now. Like, that would have been fine, right? Like, it doesn't make sense not, like, to withhold that information from him. But I think this is, obviously it makes for a cool narrative beat, and it explains things and works that way. But I think just from thinking about it not as a narrative where it should be used for narrative importance, but as, like actual characters were they real world, you know, the reason why it makes sense for Rukia to withhold that information until it becomes pertinent, is that she's from a society where that's entirely the case, right? Soul Society is all about kind of covering up the morally dubious parts, all about, you all you need to know is what's important for you to function, for you to do your job, right? So it's entirely a place about, with like these hidden agendas, and with absolutely like a dark history and so on and so forth. So it makes sense that, a little bit of that is internalized in Rukia, that she's not going to tell Ichigo the entire situation, because, like, one, as far as she understands, he's just going to be a temporary Soul Reaper anyway. He's not going to keep these powers forever. She's going to eventually get them back from him. That this is just a temp deal. So, like, the less that he knows, the better, probably. But even more than that, I think it's more that she doesn't, like, even if it's from a perspective of she maybe wants to protect him or protect something about him. I think it's more that she realizes that it's maybe a little messed up, right? That, like, if you can continue to persist in insisting that your enemies are monsters, it's a lot easier to think, okay, well, it's fine to fight them and kill them, and that, like, everything that your society is kind of founded on is righteous and just, right? Um, so yeah, it makes absolute sense that she would hide that from Ichigo, and I don't think she ever would have told him. Maybe if she came to trust him a lot more and all of that, but if she could have hid that from him, and she hadn't changed in the ways that she did, if she wasn't touched and kind of grew a little bit more humanity, then certainly it makes sense for her to have kept that hidden from him. Especially because a lot in these earlier chapters, like, she's constantly calling him an idiot, constantly calling him a fool. And I think it's because she looks down upon him that she sees him as someone who doesn't know anything. And I think that sort of contempt for people that don't know anything, and that willingness to leave them in the dark is, yeah, it's 100% some real Soul Society nonsense. Um, Again, some back and forth Tatsuki or Orihime. You know, just kind of getting to learn about them. I do like that Orihime is continuing. This, speaking of things that come up, her not being really aware of her sex appeal. Um, I do remember she ends up getting much skimpier clothing later on, I think in Thousand Year Blood War from Kisuke. And like, the idea is that maybe Ichigo will notice her more. And he does have like a blushing moment or whatnot. But yeah, it's interesting that, this comes up here and does eventually get brought up again. But I don't think that Orihime ever is the sort of character to maybe use her sex appeal to appeal to Ichigo. You know, I don't think she's ever intentionally trying to do that. But yeah, Tatsuki saying, go ahead and get him secluded and jump him. Uh, you know, uh. I like that she's went to the arcade with him. It's kind of interesting. Uh, I like that she's also like, oh yeah, he's no slouch. Talking about him picking up Rukia. Uh, but I guess she's more childhood friends with Ichigo than she is maybe current friends. Um, yeah, a little bit more of Orihime's imagination there. Uh, Tyranno Inoue is fantastic. I do I do love it. I wish we got more Orihime imagination in the future. Um, but I don't think the person that she is at the end of the series is that different creatively than who she is early on. Here, kind of neat that it's the slice happens in Raku's face, and that Acid Wire is going to come out of the thing. I don't know if it's because of the connection that he has necessarily. Maybe it is. Maybe he's like, okay, I want to manifest through this thing. It's curious. We don't get a lot on like why hollows appear where they appear, for what reason. Um, so it's interesting to think about that. Like he just maybe thought about that connection that he had to the Inoue household and to his sister, and so appeared through this thing that they maybe knew that they had a shared connection of. I don't know. Because if I remember correctly, the teddy bears were like gifts from the older brother, who's, of course, his name's not coming to me at all right now. But, like I said, I haven't read these chapters since they were being published. So, a long, long time. Yet again, we get the crescent moon. So, hollow attacks, maybe. Obviously, there's like a connection right away, right? There's a hollow attack happening. Hey, there's a crescent moon again. Waco Mundo. Who knew it? Anyway, the Hollows attacking their own families, I feel like might have been something that was dropped. you know, Kind of interestingly, because they talk about like Hollows attack their own family, and then those family become Hollows. The only other time that I can really think of Hollows and their families being maybe a significant beat is that Sazea Laporo Grans, notably both he and his brother Ilfort Grans, were both they're brothers, right? And so people sometimes, I know, I think Can Fear Your Own World or Spirits Are Forever With You, I think it's Spirits Forever With You, tries to kind of say like, no, Sazale used to be whatever. I consider those novels to be, like in large part fan fiction, because that's what they literally are, even if they have Kuo's blessing to a degree. Um, I think that, you know, from what we have just in the manga, and that's usually what I'm going to speculate off of, right? Is just what we have in the manga, because this is a revisit. I think that the connection there is that maybe one or the other, either Cecile or Ilfort, became a hollow first, and then preyed on the other one, and that's why the other one is a hollow. Because I think people forget this, that hollows will attack their own families. And we know that hollows devour each other's souls eventually as well. They have that whole mass congregation and eating each other to become more powerful sort of deal going on as they continue to ascend. But yeah, I think this in chapter 4 explains maybe something that some people scratch their heads over way later, just because it's a tidbit that often gets forgotten. It's curious that Hollows have like that attachment. I mean, obviously, their whole deal is that they're trying to deal with this like attachment to the living world, right? So that's there's a whole thing there that's kind of interesting to think about. I wonder if that really comes up that much else though. Outside of that one instance, I'm having a hard time thinking of any other instances where that's the case. But certainly the idea of like hollows and families is, even if it's found family, is a big thing. I mean, the whole deal of the Espada being like this organization where they've come together is important, and certainly the top three of the Espada, Berrigan, Halibel, and Stark, all have some aspect of found family. In a way, it's not explicitly put out that way. Which, of course, with number four, Ulquiorra being so like not understanding bonds to a degree, or at the very least not valuing them whenever we first come across him, that he's all about loneliness and being this lone character. But Stark obviously has Lynette, who's literally derived from him, but like this character that he has this close connection to, and we get that with Barg and having a kingdom and all these subjects, right? And we get that with Hallibel as well, with her Tres Bestias. So interesting that they gravitate towards having Fraction. I don't think servants and family necessarily are an analog, but kind of the way that they create these institutions to have other individuals around them is interesting, especially in the more powerful hollows, and maybe kind of speaks towards as they gravitate to having more of their humanity and consciousness. There's maybe a sort of still like a desire to return to some kind of society or some kind of sense of normality. But that first emerges as eating their own families, either be it grief or loss, or wanting them to join them in that as a hollow, right? But yeah, the things that were mentioned here is that they're not admitted to Soul Society by a Soul Reaper. That's an interesting line. I don't know that we ever get a moment where there's a human soul and Soul Reapers go, no, you can't come to Soul Society. But that's pretty dark to think about, that there are some souls that they just bar from Soul Society and condemn to becoming hollows. That's pretty fucked. um, like it doesn't come up again. It might be interesting to see in Hell Arc if that comes up, if Kubo continues to write that, which I suspect that will be the case. Where we are right now, for anyone watching this ahead of time, recording this as we've gotten the first chapter of the 20th anniversary Bleach Hell Arc, but it's unclear if there's going to be further publication of it, or if that was just like a one-off and it was teasing something that he had as a cool idea. I hope there's going to be more, but time will tell. I talked about the Hungry Dead there in my analysis, and also kind of that idea of attribution of hollows towards these different disasters and different things that are, why people die. Yeah. Otherwise, there's not a lot going on here. I did mention this is the first time that we do get to see the Soul Chain, and it wasn't present in those other characters, the other souls that we saw. I don't know if Kubo just didn't think about it until now, or if it's just, I think, an element of design that he didn't want to include because it might have been distracting, which makes plenty of sense, especially if the idea was to do this as early as Chapter 4. But I like the confirmation that, like, no, Orihimi's not dead, she's just knocked out. It's interesting that that attack that tore through her chest didn't actually leave a physical wound. Whereas a lot of the other ways that hollows attack things seem to actually physically, injure them. It's curious. I read that less as his hand actually going through her and more as like a metaphorical strike, that she's being stricken with enough force to knock her soul out of her body. Sort of similar to what Ruki is doing with the glove. to Ichigo to get his soul out. But yeah, here I like that Kubo brings specific attention to the soul chain, that it's over their heart and all of that. Um, yeah. Also, I like, you know, here we get Orihime and this sense of her wanting to protect, like that, like once she realizes that she's in danger, she's like, I've got to save Tatsuki, which again, I think it's not surprising that the human characters that we have, I mean, maybe outside of Oryu, but that at least out of Chad, out of Orihime, and out of Ichigo, they're all driven by this desire to protect others. That their powers really grow from protection, and it's different ways of like showing how protection can kind of be merited, meted out, I suppose. So I think it's cool that we get that immediately here with Orihime, third chapter that she's in. Seton Kaishun, I think, is her power. I think that growing out of that makes sense. And then also, yeah, obviously connection to her Fullbring and kind of being a Fullbringer, which is the way that I interpret her powers. Is that they're more kind of Fullbringer born, because obviously she's been dealing with being attacked from a hollow, even though I guess it was maybe within the last 3 years and not whenever she, like her parents, were attacked or whatever, which is the Fullbringer deal. But clearly she survived hollow attacks in the past, right? And that she, the idea of maybe Rukia noticed that that injury on her because it's hollow Ryatsu that was still present on her from the injury. Certainly makes a lot of sense in the larger scheme of things. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe her power's not totally a full bring. Maybe I'm premature in saying that. I know Chad's for sure is, but yeah, at the very least, the idea that all three of those characters all have these sort of protective powers that seem born out of wanting to protect others is pertinent and important, and kind of links them thematically. Uh, Even though they have very different iterations of what that means. Um, I think, also, I'll talk about this a lot more whenever we finally get to it with Orihime, but her power to deny things, like she literally grows the power to deny events, right? To change the history of things. And that I feel is, it's easy to feel like, oh yeah, that's God moded or whatever, or maybe Deus Ex whatever for whatever reasons. But I think it makes a lot of sense if you're thinking, okay, these characters growing powers, they're reflective of their personalities, reflective of the way that they interact with the world. So like, Ichigo, clearly he lashes out at things, right? That his mode of protection is through primarily violence. That he's like, okay, fight me, I'll fight you. That's it, right? But Orihime, her mode of keeping herself safe and keeping like, like justifying all this, she's from the beginning like kind of got this obliviousness or this denial to her, right? She's like not recognizing her own sexuality or sexual maturity. She's also kind of oblivious to like a lot of different little things, right? Whenever it gets brought up that she's constantly being attacked, right? That she's suffering all of these injuries, she's like, oh no, that's normal. So she's kind of denying like these larger parts of reality. She has this mode of denial to her, and it's not like it's unhealthy denial. I mean, she's still living with it and dealing with these things, but that to a degree, denial has always been like a part of her character, like rejection of reality to a degree has always been a part of her character, and I think that's interesting that it becomes a part of her power set as well as we move forward. So kind of cool to see that that's sort of laid there. Obviously, that becomes a lot more important as Bleach goes on. I like that, we get Hollows as being even capable of remembering so much, like even people's names. Pretty important towards building their identities as more than just monsters, though for a while it can certainly seem like they are. Yeah. This won't be the first time that, or Hime gets saved by Ichigo. That's all I'll say there. But yeah, yeah, that's about it. That's it for this chapter. Not a lot else going on, but a few kind of really cool connections, a little bit more deepening of our understanding of the world, and you know, just good stuff. Just a fantastic chapter all around. Thanks for joining me for this one. Thanks for watching this video. If you ever want to support me more, feel free to comment on the video. Let me know what your thoughts are. That certainly helps. Liking the video and all that. Any amount of engagement will drive it up the algorithm. You can support me on Patreon as well if you would prefer. That is another great way to help me out. But otherwise, I'm glad that you watched all the way through here. I'm glad that you're on board for this, and I'm glad that you hopefully like Bleach as much as I do, or like Bleach to a degree, to watch this much of a video about it. But yeah, that's all I've got for this one. Until the next time, don't ever forget, spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.